Hello everyone, if you are looking to learn and to clear your concept about React hooks, so in this video I will explain you all hooks in this one video. You will learn about all these hooks which I have listed. You can see them on the screen. So these are the hooks that we will learn in this video. So before starting the hooks, first of all we will just explain you what is hooks. Okay, first of all we will just come here to what is hooks, then we will move to explain these built-in React hooks. So let's get started. So first of all, what is hooks? The hooks are the functions to use some React features in functional components. Okay, so in other words, we can say that hooks are functions that make functional components works like class component. So before React launch hooks, okay, before Reacts come to the ground, so before that we were using React class components. Okay, we were using the React cycle methods, which were complicated for the coders. Okay, and they were confusing, and the developers had problem with that. So then React just takes some time and they just bring to the ground these special functions. Okay, these special functions which are called hooks. So then they use these special functions in functional components. So it was all about hooks. I hope that you got the concept of hooks, how it came to the ground. What is useState hook? Okay, useState hook is just a function which add state to your functional component. Now you will see that what is state. So state is nothing, just a value or variables to your component. That is just a variable that you are adding to your component. So now we will create three examples. One for the counter, the second one for input fields, and the third one for the objects. Okay, how to update our objects, how to set up our object. So now let's create the first of all for the counter app. So the first thing is to import useState hook from React. Okay, let's write that has imported from React. After that, I will write here something that is, for example, counter count. Okay, I will just print the value of count here. Whenever you would like to print the value of the variables, so you should just write these brackets. And let's create a button here, counter, or just we will call it increment. So whenever we press this button, so we should just increment our counter. So now let's create our useState. What useState? How we can just use useState? So let's first of all write useState. So this is useState function, okay, that we will use. Okay, so it will return an array to you. Here inside this you will just enter the initial value, the default value, and this useState will return an array to us. So let's check it. At the reality, it return an array to us or not. State is equal to useState hook. So now let's print it. Okay, so to print it, let's console it, console.log, and we will just print state. Now we will check it. So our React app is running. Okay, so now let's move to the Chrome browser and let's move to the console to see at the reality that it return an array to us or not. So see, this is an array which has returned. Okay, it has two elements. The first one is, see, this is the 0 elements which is undefined. We didn't define the default value. The second one is a function with us. Okay, it has two elements, a function and the default value. So now let's grab the first element from it. Okay, so let's write const count is equal to state 0. Just take the first element from our array. Okay, the state is an array with us. We will just take the first element from our array, and let's define the default value. The default value is 0, for example. Okay, so now let's print our count here. Let's check it. See, we printed that. Okay, it is 0 has printed for us. Now let's check that. console, I remove the console. If we print it right now, it will have 0 for the default value. So now let's use the function. Okay, the second element which was a function, how to use that function. Okay, that function is used to update this value. So let's first of all write that const we will just set count is equal to state the first element. Okay, just take that. So now whenever we press this increment button, we will call a function on click and just call increment function. Let's create that function. We can directly call this set count also, but I will just create a function Now let's call this setCount function, and we will just write count plus 1. So whenever we press this button, so it will call this increment button function. Inside that we will call this setCount, and that will increment the value of count. Let's check it. Just come here, let's press it. See, the value is counter incrementing. So it was all it is what is going behind the useState hook. So now let's, in short term, we are writing something like this. Okay, instead of all these things, we are just destructuring our array. We are writing like this. Instead of this, we write here array, then we write count set count. So now this is our default value, and this is the function that we want to update our value. And let's use here is, yeah, that is okay. So now let's use an input fields. Okay, how to save the values of an input fields. Let's create first of all that. So whenever we are writing something in this input fields, we should store them somewhere. Let's create another variable. Value set value is equal to use state. The default value is an empty string. And now let's call onChange event here. OnChange, and we can again call another function and create that here, or we can directly call this function from our onChange event here. So to directly call that, let's create an arrow function, and we will call that set value, and we will just write here e.target.value. So now let's print this value that we are writing inside that. So to print that, let's write, to print that I will just write value is, okay, this here before is we will print our value. So now let's check that. Just come here, let's for example write something. See, that is printing here. So it was all about that. So now let's create an object, okay, from useState. How to just update the object, how to create object using useState hook. So to create the object, I will remove all these things. I will write just const object. For I will just name it object. Set object is equal to useState, and inside it we will define the object. Now let's write count. The default value is 0, and also the value, the default value is an empty string. It is an object that we have created. Now let's write here value dot value, object dot value, object dot value, and also object dot count. So if we run it now, right now that is 0, and we don't have any string there. So now whenever we want to update, for example, we want to update the count. So how to update it? Okay, so whenever we press this increment button, so it will call this increment function. We can update that directly here also, like we did before. Okay, but instead of that, right now we don't have this set value function, so let's remove it. Okay, so whenever I press this button, so it will call this increment. So now let's update our count variable here. So update that, let's call set object first of all. Whenever we write that, so now here we will get create another function where we will get our previous state. So to create that, let's write prev state. It will give return as our previous state. Okay, that we have. The previous state is what? These default state, these default value that we have. So now we will update our values. Object. So to update our object, we will just write like this. Okay, dot previous state. This is spread operator. Okay, control set previous state. So this is spread operator. Oh, this means that it will return just the previous values which we have. Okay, and now we will update our count. So to update our count, we will write like this: count previous state plus 1. It will add just 1 to the previous state. Right now we have 0, it will add 1, then we will have 1, then it will be counted. So let's check it. Let's press the increment button. Object 1 that has printed, but here we should object dot count. So instead of previous state dot count, we should write like this: count plus 1. Save it. Let's refresh it. Yeah, let's press the increment. See, that is incremented. So it was all about useState hook. In the useState hook, this is the default value, this is the function that we would like to update this, and this is the function that we are calling. And inside this we will just define the initial or the default values. And what is useEffect hook? So the useEffect hook is used to perform side effects in our components. Okay, now you will see that what is side effects. So side effects are actions which are performed with the outside world. Okay, which are performed outside world. So we perform a side effect when we need to reach outside of our React component to do something. It means, like, I will just give you a few examples of side effects. Like, for example, you want to fetch data from an API. Okay, it is from outside, and you want to update your DOM using document and window. And also, if you would like to run timer functions, which are set time and set interval. So these are the common side effects that we are using. Now let's come to the syntax or the format of the useEffect hook. So useEffect hook just has two arguments. The first one is the callback function. The second one is the dependency, array of variables. Okay, that is optional with us. So if simply we run this callback function is what to run, and the dependencies are when to run. So if you are familiar with the class component, so there we had the lifecycle methods like component did mount, component did update, and component will mount. So for all those three methods in functional component, we use useEffect. And this useEffect has three variations. The first, let's come to these three variations. The first variation is that without dependencies, useEffect with empty array, and also useEffect with variables. So now we will just clear it within an example. We will create an example and we will clear all these three variations. So let's come here. I have this example, okay, where we have count state, and also by clicking this we are incrementing that count. So now whenever we would like to use a hook, first of all we should import it. So let's import useEffect hook, and after that let's come here. We will use that useEffect hook. It has two arguments. The first one is the function, okay, effect callback function. So first of all we will use it without dependency. It means that we will not write the second argument. We will just write the first argument, the callback function. So let's now here inside this useEffect we will update our title of our app. So let's write document dot title is equal to, so let's write the count. We will just grab all these things. Yeah, so now let's run our app. Our app is running. Okay, let's move to the Chrome. Let's close this. Let's refresh it. See, the title has updated 0 count. Okay, so now if we press this increment button, so let's see what happened. See, our title is also updating. So it means that if we don't write the array, the dependency with useEffect hook, the second argument, so it is rendering every time we make some changes in our app component. Okay, in this component when we make changes, for example we updated this count, so whenever we make these changes, so it will be rendered again and again. It will run this useEffect again and again whenever we are making changes. Okay, it will run every time. And now let's move to the second variation, which is with empty array. Let's add that just with empty array. Okay, we don't want to add any variables to this array, just an empty array. Now let's check it to the second variation. What happened now? Again let's refresh it. See, so now let's press this increment button. For the first time that has rendered. Okay, the title has updated for the first time. Okay, so let's press increment. See, this has increased but the title has not updated. This means the second variation means when we add an empty array, this means it will render at the first time. Okay, whenever we run our app, so it will render this, it will run this useEffect hook. After that it will not run this. Okay, it will not be updated. So it rendered just at the first time whenever we run our app. Now let's move to the second one to add a variable. For example, we want to add here the let's create another variable. So I have added this code. Okay, this is a count2 and also a button for count2. This is a count2 state variable, and also I use that here. Okay, I wrote this variable in this array. Okay, so now let's check it. Okay, whenever you add the variable, what happened? Yeah, see, let's refresh it again. So everything is okay. So let's press this. Okay, we are updating this state, but that is not updating. Okay, but if we press this one, see, that is updating. See, the title has updated also. Okay, it means that whenever you write a variable here, so whenever you change that variable, so it will render again. Okay, when it run at the first time it render, for the second time whenever you make changes in that variable that you have written in this array, so it will change, it will render again this useEffect hook. So these were the three variations of this useEffect hook. So now let's move to another concept which is a little bit confusing, that is cleanup function. So for the cleanup function, I have created this example. Okay, this is a timer and I displayed the timer here, and this is the useEffect. We run set interval function and we didn't run it. It will run every millisecond. Okay, so now let's check it. Okay, to run this and we will see it what happened. See, it is just running. Okay, unless we don't call a clear interval, so it will be running. Okay, it will make our application slow and low in performance. So it will just make, and it will move to memory lake. Okay, until it unmounts, so it will be keep running even if that unmounted, so it will keep running because we didn't destroy that. So it just happens in a few cases. We don't need in every time this, but let's clear it. Okay, to clear this, so for that we need to write first of all return, and here we will just call clear interval, and here we will pass this timer. So it will just clear it. Okay, so but if we run it, we cannot see it when it unmount and when it stops, but this is the way that we can unmount or stop this from continuous running. So let's start. What is useContext hook? A useContext hook is used to manage global data in your React application. For example, you would like to store your user information in more than 1, 3, and 5 components. Okay, so then there we need useContext hook to store data there, and we access from all other components. I will explain you and I will show you it in example. So for example, the global data is like you would like to store global state, themes, services, and user settings. These are the cases that you would like to store use context hook. Why we need use context hook? The reason is in this image that you see a hierarchy of components. In this component we have first of all the parent is the app, then we have children with that, then we have a hierarchy of components. For example, the data is in app component. Okay, in this app component you have the data and you want to access that in a single post component, which is down, okay, in the last step. And whenever you want to access those data in this single post component, so it is hard to pass from app to main, then from feed to following to, it is hard to pass from one by one to a single post. So the reason is that we are using useContext to store the data in the parent and access in all components. Wherever we want, we can access that data, that global data. So how to use this create context hook? So this context hook, so for to use this we need 3 steps. First of all, we need to create context, then we need to provide the context, the third step is to consume the context. Okay, so now let's get started to create an example for that. Okay, this is in React app. Okay, this is the app, the parent one, and then we have a child component which I have called in this parent. Inside this child A, I have another component which is child B. Okay, I want to store here some data in this app component, and I want to access that in child B, which is the grandchildren of app.jsx. So for that, let's first of all import useContext hook that has imported from React, and after that let's create context. So I will just write like this: const user context is equal to create context. Sorry, this is create context. Create context, and after that we will just wrap all our components through this user context. Okay, like this. For example, we want to all our children component should access this data that I am providing here. So we will write something like this. Okay, let's write here user context dot provider So all this component and all children component of this will access the data that I am passing through this provider. So let's pass the data. For example, value is equal to, I will just pass a name like coding. This is a name that I have passed through this provider. All these child, this child and the child component of this component will access this value. So how to access that? Let's come here to the child view. We would like to access that data here. So first of all, we will just import that. Import user context from app.jsx. Okay, after importing that, so now we will use that. So to use it user context, so we need another hook. We would like to import that useContext from React. Okay, that has imported. So now let's come here and we will just write const user is equal to useContext, and we will assign this user context that we have created. After that, our value will be assigned to this user. So now let's print the user. Here I will just print user. Now let's run our React app. cd client. I will move to the client folder, npm run dev. That will start our React app. And let's move to this URL. So let's check it. This is app. Inside app we have just, let's come here to the main. We called app here. So that we have called a child A. So let's just come here. We should export it. Okay, the context that we have created, we should export that. Now let's check it. Refresh our page. See, this is our data. This is the coding that we have passed. Okay, if I pass something else, let's for example, okay, let's save it. See, that has changed the data. So it was all about use context hook. If you understand and this, so congratulations that you learned about use context hook, how to use it. So it was all about the use context hook, to use that. Okay, for global data. It had 3 steps. First of all, create that, provide that, and consume that. First of all, let's define it. It has 2 common use cases. 2 use cases which we use the useRef hook. The first one is that the useRef allows us to access DOM element. Okay, to access our elements from our components. Okay, we will implement this in example later. Okay, the second case is that it is used to create mutable variables which will not re-render the components. These are 2 most common use cases for this useRef hook. So let's first of all, we will implement the first use case, which is to access DOM elements through useRef hook. So we have this input fields and a button. So let's first of all access this input elements. Okay, so to access it, first of all, we need to import the useRef hook. After importing it, so let's use it. So to use it, let's write const input element is equal to useRef. Now we will just use the useRef property of this here. Let's write ref is equal to with the input element. So now through this input element we will access this DOM element. Whatever we want, we can make changes through that input element. So let's first of all print it. Okay, so whenever we press this button, we will call a method. console.log input element dot current. So it has it will return an object. Okay, this useRef will return an object which has the current property. We can console that also. Let's console that input element. First we console this input element, then we console here the whenever we click we will print this input the DOM element. So let's run our application. I will move to this folder. It will start the server. Let's move to this URL. Let's press F12 to move the console. See, we printed this object, so it is as an object return an object which has the current okay, this current property. And now let's press the this button. Whenever we press, it will return this when we write the input element dot current, so that has returned the DOM element input field. Okay, so now let's, for example, whenever we press this button, so we should increase the width of this input element. So to do it, let's come here. Here I will write input element dot current dot style dot width is equal to, for example, 250 pixel. So let's check it. Let's press this button. See, the width has increased. Okay, if you want to focus on this whenever we press the button, so we can do that also. Input element dot current dot focus. We will just call this focus method. Let's refresh it. Yeah, whenever we press this, see, the focused and also the width has increased. So it was all about to access a DOM element. So the second use case is the to create a mutable variable. So now let's create an example for that. So for the second example, I have created this input field and also a name. I have displayed the name here down. Okay, it looks like this. Okay, whenever we are writing a name here, that will be displayed here. So now we want to check how many renders happen whenever when we are writing a name here. Okay, how many renders happen. So for this you may be thinking that we should use the useState hook. So let's first use this useState hook. What happened? I will just create another one here. That would be count and set count. Let's use useRef hook, useEffect hook, and let's just update that set count. And let's display that. Let's save it. So we should assign 0 default. See, that is updating constantly. Okay, see, it is unstoppable. So this is the problem with useState hook. So now let's use useRef instead of this. So let's remove this. So to use ref hook, that is imported already. So let's write count is equal to useRef hook. Let's assign 0. So now let's update it. And we will just use count.current. Okay, this useRef return an object with current property. Count.current is equal to count.current plus 1. Yeah, we just displayed the count here. Sorry, what happened? We should print here count.current. Check it. Okay, let's write. See how many characters we are writing. So that is updating with that. Okay, it is rendering, for example, 10 times. Now we enter 10 characters now. So it was the difference between useEffect hook and useRef hook. So I hope this was helpful for you. This was the second case, that to create a mutable variable, and the first use case was to access the DOM elements. So first of all we will come what is useReducer hook. So useReducer hook is used to manage state in our React application. In other words, we can see that useReducer hook works like state management tool. And now let's say what is state management. State management is used to manage all states of application in a simple way. And this useReducer hook we use whenever we need to manage a lot of states and methods. So for that case we are using useReducer hook. So now let's just explain it in an example. So I have already created an example. This is an example. We have increase and decrease buttons. So whenever we press this, it will increase and it will decrease back. So I used useState hook for this. Now let's perform it with using useReducer hook. So let's first of all remove this. After that let's change it to useReducer hook. And now let's declare it. useReducer. So useReducer has two arguments. The first one is the reducer. We will explain it later. And the second one is the state, okay, the initial value, the default value that we will assign to it. So for the default value, let's create another variable const initial state, for example, is equal to. So we will just create it as an object and we will assign it a count. The default value is 0. So now we will assign this initial state here. This is our initial value or default value that we will use. It is an object with count variable. So this reducer has returned. So now let's destruct it. To destruct it, let's write const. We will use array destruction for it. So the first one is that useReducer will return, that is the current state that we have. The second one is the dispatch, for example. We will name it dispatch. This name depend on you, but I will name it dispatch. These are most common names for it. So this dispatch is used to update our state. So now let's create this reducer. What is the reducer? So to create reducer, let's const reducer is equal to. So this reducer has two parameters. The first one is the current state that we have, state. The second one is the action that we would like to perform. What we want, for example, increase, decrease, what we want to perform. These are the two. But for now, we will just return the current state. So to return it, let's write return statement. Then we will just write an object. So we will update the count. So let's increase it. Okay. So to increase it, we will write state.count plus 1. So it will increase it. Now let's call it. Okay, how to call it? So for updating this state, we will use this dispatch. Whenever we press this increase button, it will call this. So here I will just call dispatch. Let's move to the Chrome. We paste with an error. So let's check it. Where is the error count? We should write state.count. Let's save it. Yeah, right now we have it. Let's press the increase button. See, we are increasing. We are able to increase it. For example, so now we want to handle different actions. For example, increase, decrease, and others. So for that, let's pass here. Yeah, in this increase, we will just pass to this dispatch an object with type is equal to, for example, increase. Whenever we pass it, let's now handle it in the reducer function. So just come here to the reducer. Let's console it once, console.log and action. We will just print the action. What we get in this action whenever we pass this type to that. So let's move to the console. So let's press F12 and we will move to the console. Here let's first of all refresh it. And now let's press increase. What we get, see, we got this type increase in action. So now we will handle it. So to handle it, for that we can use if else and also switch and others. I will use switch statement for that to handle it. Switch, let's use switch and we will pass here action.type. Now let's perform. If the type was equal to with the case, increase. So then we will perform to increase the value. We will just return the count state dot count plus 1. If that was decreased, then we will decrease that. And by default, let's return the state, and let's also perform the decrement in this dispatch in this decrease method. Let's dispatch it, and we will just type would be decrease. So now let's check it. Okay, what we get in the result. Let's remove it, refresh it. Let's press increase. We are incrementing the value, we are decreasing back the value. See, it has done using useReducer hook. So it was all about useReducer hook. So it was the syntax of useReducer hook that we have used. So we can just manage complex state using useReducer hook. What is useLayoutEffect hook? useLayoutEffect hook works exactly as the same useEffect hook. We have already explained the useEffect hook in another video. You have the link for that video in the description. But the difference is that when it runs. Okay, the difference is when it runs. useEffect hook runs after the DOM is printed on the browser. Okay, whenever all elements printed, then the useEffect hook will run. But the useLayoutEffect hook runs before the DOM is printed on the browser. It is the difference between these two. For example, whenever we want to run some code, a piece of code before the DOM is printed, okay, like height, width, anything related to the layout. Okay, so for that purpose we use useLayoutEffect hook. So that is the reason that the name of this hook is useLayoutHook. And the second difference is that the useLayoutEffect hook is synchronous, but the useEffect is asynchronous. Synchronous means that, for example, there are 3 statements. It will learn the first one. When that complete, it will move to the second, then to the third. And the most common use cases for the useLayoutEffect is used to get the dimensions of the layout. So it was the use case of it. So now we will explain it through an example. For example, we have a toggle example. Let's see it. Okay, this is a toggle example. For whenever we press, it will display, it will remove back. So this is the example that we will explain now, the useLayoutEffect hook. So now let's add useLayoutHook and useEffect hook. useLayoutEffect hook, and let's console.log. We will show that in the console. useLayoutEffect hook, and it will update render whenever we update toggle variable. In the same code we will write for useEffect hook. Let's copy this and just paste it here. Just change the useLayoutEffect to useEffect hook. So after changing that, so now let's check the example. Yeah, let's refresh it again. So right now we have useLayoutEffect hook. Let's change the text, useEffect hook. See, first it will render the useLayoutEffect hook, then useEffect hook. Let's press this button. See, again first render it, then it. Okay. Now let's change the order also. For example, let's write it at the top. Again it will render. First of all, let's press the toggle. See, first of all this one, and then the useEffect. Again first useEffect hook, then useLayoutEffect hook first of all, then useEffect. Again let's press this again. Okay, so it means that the useLayoutEffect hook will render first, then it will render the DOM, these elements, then it will come to the useEffect hook. The flow is that first of all it will whenever it come to the components reactjs, First it will render these DOM. First it will run useLayoutEffect hook, then the DOM elements, then it will run useEffect hook. So it is the flow of this reactjs. So I hope that you got and understand about the useLayoutEffect hook, and this is used to just for the dimensions up and for the layout. What is useMemo hook? useMemo hook is used to apply memoization in React. So now what is memoization? Memoization is a technique for improving the performance of our code, and it is useful to avoid expensive calculations on every render when the return value is not changed. We don't, for example, I will just show you it in example. So let's see the example. This is an example which I have created. So this is example. So let's check it. Okay, this is an example. Okay, let's press it will change the number. Okay, so whenever we press this button, so it will take some time to change this number. See, we press this button, that button, but it will see that has take 2-3 seconds. Whenever we press this toggle, also it take sometimes, but we don't need with this toggle button. Okay, we should not wait whenever we press the toggle button. When we change the number, we should wait. So this is the problem that we have. Okay, when we press the toggle, it takes some time. It again takes a time to toggle. Okay, we don't need this time whenever we press toggle, because we are not changing the number when we press the toggle button. So for this purpose, the performance of our code is not good, and we need to remove this wait. Okay, to not wait whenever we don't need. So for that, this is the code. Okay, this is the example. I have two state variable, number and dark. This is the number that we would like to update. This I have used this in input field for that. Whenever we change, so it will change the number, and this button is used for toggle. Okay, for dark. Whenever that is true, so it will background will be black. If again that came to false, it will be white. So this is the example that we have created, and here we called a function. See, this is the function we have called calculation, and we passed number here, and we use this for loop. This for loop is just for the purpose to show you the wait, the performance. Okay, that we are waiting for a task. So maybe you are running some other task of code, other piece of code, but just this example, this for loop is just to show you this bug. We return back the same number, and we store that here, and we display that back here. So now whenever we press this toggle button, we should not wait. So for that, we are using useMemo hook. So let's first of all use useMemo hook. useMemo. This is same to useEffect hook. Okay, the syntax and everything is same to the useEffect hook, but the difference is that this return a value, but the useEffect hook does not return a value. It will run whenever we change the number. Okay, whenever we change this number, so it will be run. Again, it will re-render. So we will call that method now inside this useMemo. Yeah, that is calculation, and we will pass number to that. And let's pass number to that. And also we will store the value, return value inside const cnum is equal to this. Okay, let's remove now this. So let's check it now. Okay, let's come here and let's press this button. So whenever we press this button, it will take some time to update the value. See, that took the wait sometimes. So let's just take C. Let's just write return statement here to return that value. Come here now. So let's press. Now let's refresh it. See, the value has printed. Again, if you press this, so it will take some time, then it will update the value. See, that took some time, but if we press this toggle, see, ultimately without wasting any time, it is just toggling and changing the background. So it was all about useMemo hook, that we just saved our time and improved the performance of our code. So this was all about useMemo hook for memoization in React.js. What is useCallback hook? useCallback is used to return memoize function. We previously in a video we just learned about useMemo hook, but this is that useMemo hook was returning memoize value, but this useCallback hook return memoize function. It is also useful for preventing functions from being recreated and re-rendering. So it may be confusing for you, but let's explain it with an example. You will understand very well about this. So for example, this is an example which I have created. Okay, let's check it on the Chrome. This is the result that we have. Okay, this is the table that we have printed the values, and this is the toggle button. For example, I would like to change the value. See, this table has also changed, and this is the toggle button. Whenever I press this, it will toggle it. So now let's check it in the console, what we get in the result. First I will show you the code. These are two state variable. One is number, the second one is the dark for themes, and this was number for the table. So this is the style, CSS styles, and this is the function which will calculate our numbers, these table. Okay, 1 2 3 4, these numbers. Okay, our number will be multiplied in 1 2 3 and 4, and this is the code. Okay, input fields, and this is the print table. We have printed our table inside this print table. This is the toggle button. Let's check this print table component. This is the print table component. Inside this we have just passed this function. Okay, we pass this calculate number function, we pass that as a component, as a prop to this one, and here we just use that. Okay, in useEffect hook we used first of all a console, then we just set these rows through this calculate numbers. Okay, this calculate number return those numbers, that table, and then we displayed those values. Okay, we displayed those values of the table. So now let's check again. Let's move to the console. I will show you. Okay, let's refresh it. So let's, for example, we would like to change the number. See, when we change the number, so it called print table. It means it rendered this print table component also. Again, if we press toggle button, again that printed print table component, it means that it has called again. Okay, print table. But instead of that, we don't need in this time to call this component, okay, the print table component, when we press this toggle button, because we need that whenever we change the value. We don't need whenever we press the toggle button. So this is the problem that we faced with that. Okay, if we change this value, we need that to print. Okay, we need to call this component, but instead whenever we press this toggle button, we don't need to call that component. This is the problem that we faced. Okay, we will solve this problem. We should not call this print table component whenever we press this toggle button. So as you saw in the previous video, we used useMemo hook, that was for just returning a value, but this is used for useCallback is used to return a function. So now let's instead of this function, okay, calculate number, we will use useCallback hook. So let's first of all import that useCallback, and after that it is same to, it has the same syntax as useMemo hook, and let's write useCallback. First of all the callback function, then the array dependency. In this array dependency we will just call number. It will call whenever we change this number. Okay, this number, and here we will use just this code. And let's store it inside this function. A const calculate number. Let's remove this one. Okay, so this is the callback that we have used. We can also pass value to this. Okay, we will get that value here. So now let's check it. Okay, what happened right now whenever we use callback hook? Just come here to the Chrome. Let's refresh it. Refresh that. Let's change the value. Whenever we change the value, so that component has called. Okay, print table component has printed. Whenever we press toggle, see that has not printed. It means that didn't called. Again, if we press toggle button, again not printed. If we change the value, so that will be called again. See. So it was all about useCallback hook, that this was the problem that we faced, and we solved that using useCallback hook. We just prevent ourselves from re-rendering whenever we are rendering our component, from recreated a function, a component. So it was a problem, it was a solution for using the useCallback hook. What is custom hooks? The custom hooks are basically a reusable functions. Reusable function. In simple words, we can say that custom hooks are your own hooks that you create for your own use, and you can use them multiple times in your project. For example, I will explain it to you. This is an example. Okay, we have pitched the records. See, these are the records which we have fetched from this API JSON placeholder. and we used this logic. Okay, we pitch the data using this useEffect hook, and then we store that in this state variable. So for example, we want to fetch data in 3, 4, even 10 components. We want to use the API and fetch records from that. So instead of implementing this in every component, we want to create our own hook, custom hook, and we use that. Okay, we just implement that once but use it multiple times. So for that, let's come here and we will just create a new folder. For example, the name of that is custom hooks, and inside it I will create a folder by the name of, for example, usepage.js. This is our custom hook, so let's import it. Yeah, so now we will implement that logic here instead of that. Okay, let's cut this logic, just cut it and just paste it here. After pasting it, let's import useEffect and useState hook. After importing them, so now we will just return this users. Here instead of that we will return user, and one thing else that we will just remove this URL, because we will pass URL from every component as a parameter. So let's name it URL, and we will paste it here in pitch. Okay, instead of here we will just paste that here URL. So now let's come here back to our app.jsx. We will just call our custom hooks now here. Const, we will store the data in user is equal to useFetch, which is our custom hooks that has imported by defaults, and we will just pass our URL here. So what is our URL? So let's copy our URL from this route, copy this and just come here and paste that here. So let's save it, and now let's look at that. Let's come here, we didn't get the records, so we should use users.map. Okay, everything is okay, and we use this use pitch, and let's we use pitch, we pass URL here. Yeah, everything is okay. So let's log back. Yeah, I think the internet was that was internet problem, so let's refresh it again. So it was all about our custom hooks. Okay, so we created a custom hooks, and we can use it multiple times. For example, in 10, 12, 13, how many components you want to fetch data, just pass the URL, so it will fetch the records and you will get that in that component. So it was all about custom hooks. So you can use in different ways, just use your logic to implement custom hooks. So if this video was helpful for you, don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel, and thanks for watching.